welcome into Pushing the Limits this week. Today I have one of my favorite doctors in the whole wide world, and that's saying a lot because I interview a lot of doctors, but this Dr. Thomas Levy is back to guest for the third time on the show. And honestly, Dr. Thomas, I just wanted to say before we even get started, thank you so much for everything that you do in the world, because the information that you're putting out is like you could not buy this education anywhere else on the planet except at the feet of Dr. Levy. Like, you're just absolutely amazing. The books that you've written, I think we're up to 13, is that right? Or we got more now?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
13 books. You're a board certified cardiologist. You're also an attorney. It's a really interesting story. And we've done a deep dive previously on vitaminC, because you've written the book Curing the Incurable. And I did want to go over some of that again, because vitaminC is still one of my favorite topics. But you've also done other books like Death by Calcium and Hidden Epidemic, especially those two that I wanted to sort of touch on today. But Dr. Thomas, yeah, how you been? You been good?
Very well. Very good, Lisa. Thank you.
Fantastic. Right. Okay. So last time we did actually rapid virus recovery, and we touched on your book, Rapid Virus Recovery, which I'll link to in the show notes. And I'd love everybody to actually go back and listen to that. So before we get underway with the other bits and pieces, we've just come through this this pandemic, whatever you want to call it. And what have been your latest learnings from this last year since we've connected again? And since writing Rapid Virus Recovery, have you had any more insights and things to add to the conversation?
Wow, quite a bit, actually. We've talked before about all disease being too many oxidized biomolecules and how toxins are what cause that. So basically, all diseases are from toxins. And so you have to ask the question, where are the toxins coming from? And of course, we know about the dental connection and the infections. Infections produce most of the toxins we're exposed to. And then there's the persistent spike protein from COVID, and so many people that have been vaccinated and a few that have had just chronic COVID without vaccinations. That's another toxin overlaying these other toxins. And you really can't properly treat anybody for anything until you're quite comfortable that there's no persistent spike protein or no chronic infective agent present from COVID. And you do this with D-dimer tests and a few other things. And then there's the other hidden epidemic, if you will, of accumulated heavy metals. Even though I knew this article 25 years ago, it didn't sink in. And that article showed that people with very large hearts, they did biopsies at heavy metal levels, and in those hearts, they found 2,200,000% more mercury inside those cells than in normal cells.
Wow.
And they found 1,100,000% more antimony, which nobody knows anything about except to say it's a heavy metal that's more toxic than arsenic.
Yep.
And so then this begs the question, where's all that coming from? Well, pretty much the mercury is coming from those who have had amalgams in their mouth for decades, although there are other sources, that's the lion's share. And the antimony, nobody knows about this. Plastic bottles.
Yeah.
Plastic bottles.
Yep.
Antimony is used to make the plastic that we put our water in and drink all the time from, okay? Enormous amounts of antimony. And so, hey, we got to go back to the days of 40 years ago when Coca-Cola used bottles.
Yeah.
Okay, they use glass.
I take organic acid testing every week in my clinic with my clients, and antimony, 99% of the nutrastats that I've gone through with heavy metal toxicity panels have come back with antimony off the scale.
There you go. But I mean, but nobody's paying attention to it. But the thing is not a lot. Some people know that antimony is bad for you. They have these sources, but I don't think until now we had the evidence that it's accumulating like crazy.
Yeah.
That's the kicker. It is accumulating, so we have to be much more diligent. And finally, you're asking for hot new items. I got to say this is really hot off the press, is we've talked about many different things to do for health, et cetera, and all the biooxidative therapies. Well, it turns out, working with this physician in Switzerland, Dr. Fabrice Lau, he has an incredible technique of ultraviolet blood irradiation. But here's the kicker. It's just with a special machine that has a very focal wavelength, 254 nanometers, and combines it with takes out 50 cc's of blood, a little bit of anticoagulant, then sucks up 50 cc's of oxygen, and then with a tube going across the machine, ping pongs the oxygen and the blood back and forth across it for a couple minutes, and then injects that into the patient.
Wow. Uh-huh.
People are completely resolving their chronic COVID and completely normalizing their D-dimer, which is a marker test for your abnormal coagulation in your blood. It's blowing my mind. I mean, I just
wow.
And I'm going to be talking about this a lot in India in a couple of weeks, because we need to get the word out. Actually, the company that makes this machine had decided to stop making it until Dr. Lau and I talked. I said, talk to the company, tell them they got a lot of business waiting for them, and they're no problem. So they'll start making the machine again. It's not an elaborate machine. Wow. But the thing is we've known for a long time that ultraviolet light is a very powerful antiseptic, antipathogen. But the thing is most people are using a broad spectrum. Okay, well, getting a broad spectrum of UV light, even if it contains that 254 nanometer wavelength, is like just getting 5 milligrams of vitamin C in a multivitamin rather than 2,000 grams, 2,000 milligrams where you need it. So same sort of concept. I mean, just by luck of the draw, just by as a case, it turns out. Now, maybe there are other wavelengths that do it too. We don't know. But I do know some docs that have been using their ultraviolet machines for chronic COVID patients, and they improve, but they don't resolve like I'm talking about with this special agent. So those are the hot breaking items.
Wow, that's really exciting. And I'm deep into red light. I've got a red light in my clinic. And like you say, that one's more of a general, that's a sort of 630 to 850 sort of nanometer.
Yeah, this is 254.
This is 254. And what I'm finding, though, is the more as I study light, is that each different frequency has its different modalities.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm using 1070. I'm getting a new device for my mum, actually, and for the clinic, called a Neuronic, which is a 1070 nanometer, which has been showing really great promise in the Alzheimer's cognitive decline area, with that sort of really deep penetrating. And then you've got, you know, your 600s and your 800s, and that we commonly use for skin and healing and that type of thing. But this one is a new one on me. That's really quite low, the 250. That's really quite a, you know.
What was really amazing is how quick. I mean, sometimes it's one treatment, sometimes it's 2 or 3 treatments, and they're and their D-dimer is normal. And I mean, I'm talking about D-dimers dropping from several thousand down to below 500. I mean, and it's so exciting. And I've encouraged Dr. Lau. I said, look, there's a lot of doctors that won't do something if they don't understand it. Okay, well, I don't understand this, but I have no problem doing something that has a dramatic response and has no evidence of causing any harm. And so I said, Fabrice, we need to just start using this arbitrarily on any condition that comes around, because if it can magically clean out the blood of whatever's affecting us, normalize the coagulation, if not everything, that's got to be a powerful agent for many other things, and perhaps other really difficult infections like Lyme and AIDS and chronic hepatitis and a lot of these persistent type of conditions, or just cancer, or just heart disease. I mean, like I said, if you can take somebody that's had chronic COVID for 2 years, sick as a dog, D-dimer of 2000, and then with 2 or 3 treatments over a couple of weeks, they're normal. Come on.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Thank you for putting that on our radar, and I'll have to get the links off you for people to go and research this. So only available in Switzerland at the moment, though. You might have to travel to Switzerland.
Done. I mean, the machine is made in Germany, but like I said, I hope to be connecting along with Dr. Lau with this company, and hey, I don't mind. It's fine if people need to make money, and I want to encourage them, make some money, but get this machine out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're always on the cutting edge. You've always got something new to report. I tell you another one that I've been listening to you on, and also many others, and have been using with Mum, is Methylene Blue.
Oh my goodness, yes, that's
Yeah, like
phenomenal.
holy
Phenomenal.
crap. Like Mum has gone, after the hip operation and having this bad reaction to a bisphosphonate drug that they put into her, and then having E. coli, and then having a recurrent UTIs that hit her brain, and she went completely, we lost her completely. She was, didn't know who I was, and didn't, couldn't speak, and, really, really bad again. And then I started studying Methylene Blue because one of my mentors and doctors put me onto Methylene Blue, and I started researching, and then I'm like, wow, and now I've got to get it because I'm in New Zealand, right? And we got nothing. But I've managed to get it, and wow, like within a few days she started like talking and recognizing, and her memories improved, and now she's better than she was before the hip break, which was before E. coli, UTIs, suspected sepsis at one point. She was very, very ill, critically ill.
Well, let me say this. Obviously, you know about my history with vitamin C.
Yep.
And everything that vitamin C can do. And obviously, everybody needs vitamin C. So I'm not in any way countering that. But I've now seen enough circumstances where if you get that new little scratch in your throat or a new little drip, a quick squirt of methylene blue on the back of the tongue and the back of the throat knocks it out quicker than vitamin C.
Yeah, I've been gargling with it because I've been trying to
There
get to
you
the
go.
tonsils, that you said.
Exactly.
Because I've got root canals that I'm about to deal with. And I know the tonsil operation that you had wasn't a pleasant one. So I'm like, I don't want to go there if I don't have to.
No, you want to try to avoid that. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I've been doing the gargling of the Methylene Blue, and
good. That's great.
the other thing with Methylene Blue, my husband's been taking it, and he's a marathon runner and into the gym and stuff, and he's been lifting so much heavier. Like he's just gone from turned a switch on.
Well, methylene blue is a powerful antioxidant, as is vitamin C. And it's interesting that you mentioned that because many years ago, not recently, my buddies and I in Denver, maybe some 20 years ago, we had our own little clinic. We gave a lot of IV vitamin C. And so we're also giving ourselves a lot of IV vitamin C 2, 3, 4 times a week, whenever the opportunity presented itself. And I still remember at one point in time, I had done maybe 3 days in a row of 50 or 75 grams of vitamin C just for general health. And anybody like your husband, probably yourself, would realize you have certain thresholds that you're lifting, and you just don't pass those thresholds.
Yeah.
Well, I just went in there and I just all of a sudden went 40% above my threshold on everything. I said, oh my God, I'm the Incredible Hulk and I'm not green. But the point is vitamin C did it. I've heard a lot of stuff. Well, vitamin C is not good for exercise, this, that, or the other. That's malarkey. But you're seeing the same effect with another powerful antioxidant, methylene blue, and that's good information to hear.
Yeah, really good. And I've been running faster, and I'm a slow long distance runner. I've never ever run fast in my life. I just plod along.
Well, you directly generate more ATP inside your mitochondria. Now, what's more important to a runner than more ATP?
Exactly. So, and I'm 55 and I'm not training ultra marathons anymore. And my oxygen carrying capacity has always been low. Like I've never been good in the VO2 max stakes or anything. And I still would be no Kipchoge or anything, but I've improved at, 55 with a very stressful life. So that's pretty amazing. So yeah, I'm and I've got a friend who had long COVID and took methylene blue, and she said, it's just changed her life. Like it's just absolutely amazing. And I was looking at it for Mum for a UTI, recurrent UTIs, because it coagulates in the kidneys and in the urethra and helps as an antimicrobial. And for those listening, methylene blue was the original antibiotic before we had antibiotics, and then antibiotics came and they made more money for the pharmaceutical companies, and so methylene blue fell out of favor. But
well, let me say at this point in time too, because of everything that's happened, what I've seen with methylene blue, what I've personally experienced and seen in family and friends, and then done my research and seen what the literature supports, and I don't sell these, so nobody think I'm marketing something here. I'm just telling you, I put together what I consider the Super 8 supplements.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I have seen every possible condition. The whole point is it improves the cellular status of every cell in the body. So it's going to help anything. So the big four, or the front four, are those that bring calcium level down inside the cells. That's vitamin C multigram, magnesium multigram, vitamin D3 above 50 nanogram per cc, and vitamin K2 above half a milligram. But then the really ones, because now I've been taking, you probably too have been taking these for a long time, and I'm definitely so much better than I've been. But then when I started taking these next four, I just shot up a whole nother level like I couldn't believe. And that is the 4 supplements that directly stimulate the 4 steps of the electron transport chain inside the cell that ultimately shuttles electrons from the Krebs cycle and funnels them down to ATP synthase so that you make more ATP. The first one, the first step in that cycle is NAD. And everybody's been talking about NAD and NAD infusion. That's fine, and that's good, but that's expensive, and you don't need to make it expensive because, as Dr. Abram Hoffer found out many years ago in the 70s, when he was curing chronic schizophrenia with niacin, because the niacin is the direct precursor to NAD. And so he was just juicing that up and actually resolving completely many cases of chronic schizophrenia. Well, I don't advocate the niacin so much because a lot of people are going to stop it when they get the flush. The niacinamide, okay, the Vitamer, the same but not the same, doesn't have the flush, but makes large amounts of NAD. So niacinamide, you take a half a gram or more, up to 3 grams, depending on whether or not you have problems going on in your head. The second one is FAD, flavonoid adenine dinucleotide, and the direct precursor to that is vitamin B2, riboflavin. Okay. And, you know, again, I want to step back here. Everybody says, oh, well, I have a multivitamin. It's got B3 in it. It's got B2 in it. It doesn't matter if it's 5% of the dose you should be taking. Okay. So better than nothing. Don't get me wrong, but you're not exploiting the true possibilities of these agents till you get to certain dose ranges. Then the third step, most people have heard of, and it's probably the only thing that gets costly, is coenzyme Q10. Coenzyme Q10 feeds back to the first few stages. And I recommend, if possible, at least 600 to 800, if not a gram a day. So there's a lot of people that do take it. They take 100 milligrams or something. And if you can't afford it, fine, take less. But if cost is not a problem, get yourself up to 800 milligrams to a gram a day. And then number 4 is methylene blue. Okay,
which methylene blue
complex directly goes to the 4th step, cytochrome C oxidase, and generates more ATP directly without invoking the first 3 steps, and which also means you're not invoking the mandatory physiological oxidation that takes place to produce that. So you're producing more ATP and less oxidative stress.
Actually, it's
amazing.
I've got to add a couple of things in there because I've been deep in the weeds on NAD metabolism and that whole pathway, and I've interviewed Professor Joseph Bauer, who's a NAD.
Well, let me say, I'm not advocating anybody don't take something that's good, that's not good for you. I'm just saying, if economy is a problem, I would definitely go for these 8 and anything else you want, but don't neglect these 8.
Yeah, no, but just going back to that NAD metabolism, some extra things that might be new for you. I've come across a molecule called 1-NMA. This is Dr. Elizabeth Youth has put me onto this, and she's been studying it for the last couple of years, and it comes out of Poland actually, and it's an NMNT enzyme inhibitor. And I'll send you some research to listen to on this actually later, because one of the problems with the whole NAD pathway and with the NMN and the NRs is that we can increase this NMNT enzyme. And NMNT has been linked to cancer and obesity and cardiovascular disease. If we have an inflamed older person with a lot of senescent cells, with a lot of inflammation, then this NMNT can be upregulated. So as part of this whole NAD story, we need to be looking at how do we lower that NMNT. And I'll send you a lecture from Dr. Youth to listen to because I'll butcher the science. But this 1-NMA molecule is a metabolite of nicotinamide. And so it's a naturally occurring molecule, but we just give more of it in order to prevent the overproduction of this NMNT enzyme, which can lead to these deleterious effects, if you like, of that pathway. And so I've been really fascinated with that. And it activates also the SIRT1 genes. So I think you'll find that research really interesting. There's still lots of ongoing studies needed and so on and so forth. But it's pretty exciting because this is the whole in the NAD pathway, which we need NAD as we get older. We're losing it. We're not got enough, etc. But there are some limiting factors that we can counteract by using, say, 1-NMA, epigenin is another one to lower that CD38, because those are two enzymes that upregulate as we get older and put a hole in the bucket, if you like. So that's actually draining our NAD as well. So I love this, what you're saying. And I think this is one that might be a new one, because I don't know anybody else talking about 1-NMA yet. It's pretty new. So I want to put that on everyone's radar. And the other, with the CoQ10, with the coenzyme Q10, I just interviewed Dr. Barry Tan, who's a vitamin E researcher, and tocotrienols. And he explained how tocopherols interfere with tocotrienols, and we get a much more better effect with the tocotrienols than we do with tocopherols. And even when you've got a mixture of tocopherols and tocotrienols, how the tocopherols will inhibit the good effects of the tocotrienols. So and on the coenzyme Q10 front, he has isolated in the annatto plant where he gets his tocotrienols, he found something called geranyl, and GG for short. And this is like the back end of so K1, what we get from our plants, and then GG joined together in the body to make MK4. And this is really also powerful for that calcium story. So, and the GG also, going back to the coenzyme Q10, 2.5 GGs is coenzyme Q10, and GG gets into the cells easier than coenzyme Q10, because coenzyme Q10 is a bit of an albatross of a molecule. It's a big molecule that's hard to get across. So he's seeing better absorption when we combine the coenzyme Q10 with GG. And I know that was a bit of a mouthful. I probably lost half the audience, but I'll send you some stuff to have a look at.
Well, the thing too is, and this is not against anything that you just said, is that for myself as well, I try to keep things as simple as possible. And with the Super 8 supplements, you're doing two things. You're optimizing vitamin C levels and you're optimizing ATP levels inside the cell. And I don't think you can have any malfunction in the cell at all if you have normal vitamin C and normal ATP levels.
Gotcha.
So even if you don't know where the wheels are grinding underneath, you know, when you keep that oxidative antioxidant input and that energy production, you're clipping along about as well as you can.
Wow.
And I'm not, I'm not downplaying research and anything like that. I'm just saying, even for myself, I see so many papers these days, and I call them papers of abbreviology. And I mean,
and you're a master at interpreting too, like.
And I mean, literally, you'll see in one paragraph a dozen different abbreviations. And I'm not either intentional or unintentional. I think there's a lot of basic researchers out that really don't want anybody to understand them other than their fellow researchers. It's their own little niche, and they don't want to share, because back in the 50s and the 60s and even the 70s, you had a lot of 1 and 2 authored papers. Those were papers that were designed to teach. The author knew the subject, would explain things. Now, we just degenerate into abbreviology. And I mean, for me, I look at these things and my head spins, and I just say, well, I have to get my information from somewhere else. And I get most of my information from an intelligence summary, and don't even try to torture myself with all the abbreviations. But There's a lot about biology that's simple, and there's a lot about it that's complex.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're bang on there where you're talking about when a cell is healthy and when you've got like the right levels of vitamin C and things, and then the machinery works better anyway.
Right.
And then a lot of these nuances, which you've got in a really sick person or someone who doesn't understand the biology as well, may not come into play. So, and I appreciate that perspective too, because like with me, I'm still learning how to read these things and how to interpret what is good research, what is not good research. And it's very, very hard, like you say, when you get all this abbreviations and very, very complex biochemistry.
My overriding theme that I go about all these days is that number one, toxins cause all disease. And that's because oxidation causes all disease, and toxins are the pro-oxidants. Toxins are the oxidizing agents. But what's even more important is oxidation doesn't cause disease. Oxidation is the disease, okay? A lot of oxidized biomolecules doesn't cause some other problem or pathology. They are the pathology. And that's where biology becomes simple. When you can reduce the pathological amounts of oxidation to normal physiological levels, you have a normal cell.
Yeah, and this is that unified theory of disease, isn't it? That I listened to one of
Yes.
your lectures, and it just made everything so much simpler. Everything that is bad for you is a toxin, and that's stealing electrons basically away.
Right.
And everything that's antioxidant is giving electrons. Actually, on that point.
And let me say this, this is something else that I've come across just in the last 9 months, even though I've been doing this for 30 years. And it's a little bit of an academic point, but it's not too academic a point that people should realize, and especially those wanting to understand, which is the primary role of antioxidants is not to provide new electrons on their own, but to distribute the electrons that are present. I say that because, and I didn't see this until very recently, they have articles in the literature that show oxidized vitamin C works as well as reduced vitamin C, which means the importance of their role is not to bring new electrons in, but to distribute the new electrons that come in from your quality nutrition. Same thing with methylene blue. Guess what? All the studies with methylene blue by itself is a pro-oxidant. It's a pro-oxidant. It's in its oxidized state. When it's reduced, it's glucomethylene blue, but they take and give the oxidized form of an antioxidant, and they resolve sepsis. So I mean, and then finally, coenzyme Q10. They don't do this with a lot of supplements because there's just this general concept out there that you don't have a good antioxidant unless it's reduced, and you're wasting your time if it's oxidized. Well, they sell coenzyme Q10 as ubiquinone, which is oxidized, and it's ubiquinol, which is reduced. So, but the point is you don't need to take antioxidants in their reduced state to have the impact. They're not electron providers, they're electron distributors. I like to use the example of a widget company. You're making millions and millions and millions of widgets. You're getting in, and you have 2 delivery trucks. Well, your widgets aren't going to get many places, but if you have 1,000 delivery trucks, then even though you don't have a different number of widgets, you're getting them out there. That's all it is electron distribution rather than electron supply. And diet supplies the new electrons. Quality antioxidants distribute the electrons.
Wow. And this is like, because you hear about the ORAC, I've forgotten what the abbreviation.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Let me jump right into that. Okay. This or oxygen radical
antioxidant or
antioxidant capacity.
Yeah.
And they have so much BS out there where they say, well, and they love to pick on vitamin C. They say, well, this is 10 times more powerful than vitamin. This was 80 times. Astaxanthin is 6,000 times more powerful than vitamin C. Well, guess what? They're just measuring the ability to release an electron. They're not measuring the ability to regain the electron. So you continue to do the circle of supply, give and take. And the other thing is the value of an antioxidant is getting everywhere in the body. A large molecule that's fat soluble like astaxanthin is great for your eyes, but it's not going to do much for the rest of your body, no matter how easy it gives up its electron. So it's completely misleading. And obviously the people that come out with supplements latch onto it, especially if it's a antioxidant substance. They say, well, on the ORAC scale, as measured by the ORAC scale, our product is, 500 times more potent than vitamin C.
Yeah, I've heard that.
That's
so many
got
times.
nothing to do with clinical impact. Vitamin C is a small molecule. It gets into every cell of the body. It uses the glucose transporters that to get in with insulin. It donates 2 electrons per molecule rather than 1, and has an intermediate state. And if you run short on vitamin C, you die of scurvy. So it's kind of important.
Yeah, and you know my story with my dad and how I fought for him when he had sepsis to get vitamin C. I wasn't even aware of methylene blue at the time, and didn't know to ask for that either. Wouldn't have got it. But
you could have snuck some down his throat real easy.
Well, he was intubated. I was absolutely
buggered. Okay, well.
So we were absolutely buggered because I couldn't get anything in that way or any way, and without there, and he was being monitored 24/7, so I couldn't even, do it myself.
without the stormtroopers intervening.
Exactly. Yeah. And I wanted to come in with the stormtroopers and save his life, but I wasn't able to, and I had to fight against the ethics committee and all of that. And people know my story.
Hospitals are totalitarian regimes.
Yeah, they are.
Make no doubt about it.
Oh,
they're like the worst communist government on the planet.
Yeah. You get into their control and you watch out. If they think that you've got a chance for living, and they'll do the operation like with my dad, and they were on his side at the beginning until they decided that he was not worth saving and he was going to cost too much money, and then he was a bad bet, and that there was nothing else that they could do anyway. They'd given him the antibiotics, and at that time they turned on us. And then it was about getting rid of him as fast as possible. And I say this absolutely openly and provocatively, because I lost my dad, like this cost me my dad. So I'm still very angry about it 4 years later, and an activist for people to get vitamin C. And the story of the New Zealand farmer who got vitamin C and survived.
Alan Smith, of course.
Yep,
yes,
Alan.
Absolutely.
And I tried to use that case, and they went, whoa, when I brought that case up, it was really, up against it. And I've helped in other cases since then with people ringing me because they know that I've done this work in this space. And they've heard your lecture, for example, with me, and can you help me? My loved one's dying in the ICU. I want to get vitamin C. I can't get it. And every time we've tried, we've just failed. I've never been able to break through the barriers, and it's just, to me, like it's like with the polio. I've heard you lecture on Klenner healing people with polio back in the 1940s, and how many people suffered from polio and the ensuing epidemic of polio.
I don't mind saying this: modern medicine does more harm than good.
And you're a cardiologist. You're you went to medical school.
Especially, and no question, they do more harm than good. If you they don't allow it because they actively suppress it, prosecute, do everything else, the competition. If you allow the proper proliferation of complementary medicine, orthomolecular medicine, this, that, or the other, I guarantee you the differences will become apparent very quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the best way, if it could be achieved, I don't know that it can be achieved, is for different governments to come up with bills in their Congress, legislature, whatever, and call it the Freedom to Healthcare Choice Act. But basically the crux of it would be all insurance companies would be compelled to reimburse patients for whatever they choose to be treated with. Because right now you have cancer patients that won't get $5,000 worth of extended vitamin C infusions over several months because it's going to cost them that out of their pocket. Instead, they get $100,000 worth of chemo, which still baffles me, because you would think the insurance company would want to just pay $5,000 rather than $100,000. So there's a lot of other nuances going on here that I don't really know about. But the point is if you got to the point where, well, like any other thing, you let the market reach its own level. You let people seek out what they want to seek out. I'm also against, any sort of law that makes it illegal to practice medicine without a license. Okay, going through med school is obviously, after what we're talking about here, no guarantee that you're doing the right thing for patients. On the other hand, if you have somebody in a community that's taken care of a lot of things, helped people, knows a lot of the things that I'm talking about, you shouldn't have the law knocking him down if people choose to see him or her.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And we always ignore native wisdom and ancient, therapies and Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine and all of these things. Like if we could have a collaborative approach where we take the best of all of these things and start to put them into practice, we'd see a lot more success in our healing. And like basic things like vitamin C. Like this is just like, we'll go and listen to the original episode, and I'd love to dive deep into vitamin C again because it is so powerful. I'm trying to open up a vitamin C IV clinic in my hyperbaric clinic. But we have to get a GP, and so I've got to convince a GP to help me do this, and trying to get across the science, to the GPs.
Are you in Auckland? Where?
I'm in a place called New Plymouth. So about 4 or 5 hours south of Auckland. So
Okay.
yeah, I know how to do it, but we've just got to convince a GP that will take the responsibility for our clinic, so hopefully we'll get there, because I've got people coming in left, right and center, and luckily we have one other IV clinic in our town with wonderful doctors who do that, but they're busy and they're full,
John Appleton in New Zealand, he's in Auckland, he's not a doc, but he's worked with the Live On Labs,
yes, I have
Liposomal C
his
for
in
some
my
time. Right, he knows a lot of the people, he knows the community, he might be able to help you
right.
find the right person.
Yeah, because I love Live On Labs liposomal vitamin C. I've got that in my range now, and it's available everywhere. And people should be doing that because it's a very good form of vitamin C if you can't get intravenous, because most people can't get access to intravenous on a regular basis from either cost perspective or you've got no clinic that does it in your region. So your next best option would be the liposomal. Tell us a bit about why you have to be careful which liposomes you get, because most of them are rubbish.
Well, when you say which liposomes, you shouldn't say which liposomes, just
company.
liposomes. They don't have them, all right?
Yeah, they don't have them, but Live On Labs has got the best. Well, they're the original too.
Live On Labs about 18 years ago just started with this, and I mean they just shot out of the gate because people felt so much better taking it, and that's a supplement business. Who's doing well? Let's copy them. Well, they did their best to copy Live On, but they didn't want to be bothered with the incredible expense and technology and expertise needed to be involved in making a proper liposome encapsulated supplement. Basically, most of them, I'm not going to say 100%, but most of them just lie. I mean, it's kind of like, this is a liposome product and it's going to do you good. And the reason they get away with it, at least, is because there still is some vitamin C in it.
It's still going to get better.
They're going to get better to some degree just from the vitamin C, but they're not going to get anywhere near the powerful impact of the liposome delivery directly into the cell.
Yeah, and when you do it via liposomal delivery, you're saving yourself on ATP because it's not energy, it's energy cost effective. It goes straight through the membranes of the cell without using up.
It sounds crazy, but if you have regular vitamin C circulating in the blood, like you gave an IV, and you have encapsulated vitamin C liposome in the blood, the liposomes are going to get inside the cell without the consumption of energy. And the unencapsulated vitamin C is going to need ATP dependent. It's going to ATP mechanisms to get inside the cell. So you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're paying a price to get your energy delivering material from point A to point B. Matter of fact, I got to say this, and I'm seeing this more and more, especially now, since IVs are getting so enormously expensive. I mean, here in the States, you got a good deal if you could find a 50-gram infusion for $200. I mean, it's like 300, 350, $400, and not many regular folks can afford that. And the point being is, a lot of people say, "What do I do?" And I've had an immense amount of experience with the Live-On product. And I say, particularly when they're dealing with colds or flu, or they're dealing with post-operative situations or post-dental situations where we wrote about, we'll take IV vitamin C. I mean, taking like 5 grams for dental work, 5 grams the day before, the day of, and every day for 2 or 3 days afterwards, gives you as good or better coverage than the IV. Okay, and for 1/10 the price.
Wow.
I have to tell this little story because some 10 years ago, I was in Puerto Rico giving a lecture, and my wife calls me. She got a little bug bite, or anyway, and that had happened sometime in the past. But then she sent me a picture, and she was all red, and the eye was swollen shut. And she said, I need some IV vitamin C or something like that. I said, well, I agree. I said, but there are no flights until, mid-morning tomorrow, getting me to you late in the afternoon. I said, in the meantime, now mind you, she was already on maximal antibiotics and a moderate amount of vitamin C. All right. So I said, look, you have the boxes there, the Live-On boxes. I said, I want you to do this. I want you to take 5 packets, that's 5 grams, of the Liposomal C every hour until you go to bed at night.
Wow.
So, she took about 30 packets, something along those lines, 30, 35 packets. And I said, send me a picture first thing in the morning of your eye. The next morning I see that, and the eye has started to open up.
Wow.
So we clearly broke the cycle. I mean, I think she could have easily died from this personally, because when you start getting infections in there, they go straight back into the cavernous sinus and cause all sort of problems. But the point was, in the face of some vitamin C in maximal antibiotic therapy, liposomal vitamin C, I think it bailed her out, certainly as well as, but I think better than an IV would have.
Wow, that's really powerful, because we really are struggling to get IV vitamin C, in remote areas and in people that can't afford it. And Live-On is not cheap either, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper than doing the
IV. I mean, you can. How many boxes of that could you buy for $300?
Yeah, you could buy 4 or 5 boxes,
Yeah, exactly.
So that's really, really valuable. Actually, let's slip now and go on into the hidden epidemic and the book that you wrote about root canals, because this horrified me, because I've got a hell of a lot of dental work, and I've been trying to find someone to do a cone beam. But tell us about hidden epidemic and why this area drains. And this is really important for anyone suffering from breast cancer or cardiovascular disease. Pay attention to this. This is not just about dental. Can you give us a bit of a brief on hidden epidemic and root canals and the toxins in their mouth and things?
Well, first of all, I wrote a paper on this recently. It's on my website, tomlevymd.com, and you look under orthomolecular. And the title of the article is "Root Canals Cause Breast Cancer Frequently." All right, I can't make it any clearer than that. All right, and I didn't want to, some people are going to say, oh, that's designed to upset or irritate or provoke or exaggerate. Well, it's designed to provoke, irritate, and but not exaggerate. There's no exaggeration at all. When you have severe gum disease, which means infected gums, root canals, which are 100% infected, other infected teeth, they have something called abscess teeth that you just develop and you don't know them because they don't hurt, and the infected tonsils, which always results when you have these infected teeth. You have an ongoing, nonstop delivery of pathogens and toxins that, believe it or not, listen to this, they get into your system better than if you put them in a syringe and directly injected them IV. Wow. Why is that? It's because every time you chew, you generate more pressure between 2 molars than you can find anywhere in any biological system that you can put together. What happens then when you chew on a tooth that has an abscess on it, which is the case with all root canals? You might not see it, but it's there. Every time you chew on those root canals, 2 things happen. You express toxins and pathogens directly into the venous blood, and those circulate and then manifest most commonly in your heart, because that's the first high pressure system that you encounter. You go low pressure, low pressure, low pressure, finally left ventricle, boom, high pressure and you embed into the arterial walls. And number two is you express it directly into the lymphatic drainage.
Wow.
And the lymphatic drainage all goes through the breasts. All right. They don't have lymphatic drainage that goes from the mouth directly into the system. The drainage pattern is through the breast, then through the breast, then to the armpits, and then into the systemic circulation. And the thing is you have to, in this, I got to say, on this article, there's 250 current references here. I'm not pulling anything out of thin air.
You never do.
Anybody who thinks Dr. Levy's crazy for saying this, or he's just irritated at dentists, or he's just trying to make a name for himself, well, I'm not making any money on this. I'm just giving you the raw truth. And unless you think, unless you're worried, whether you're a physician, a dentist, or a potential patient, that you're going to hear something you don't like, well, then don't read the paper. But the paper is not written in an emotional fashion. I just line up the data, all right? They show you don't develop cancer anywhere where you don't have increased oxidative stress. And you don't have, and the only things that cause the increased oxidative stress are toxins. And the primary cause of new toxins are indwelling infections. Now, they've taken breast cancer and cultured it. They have the oral pathogens from the mouth inside the tumor itself and in the extracellular fluid surrounding it. It's as they say, it's a no-brainer. Yeah. I mean, I just cringe every time I see some young woman that goes straight to the physician and then the oncologist and then starts the chemo.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just over before it starts. It's just a shame. It's just a shame.
And we just lost a cousin this week to breast cancer, and nobody checked the dental situation. And you know, like I've got root canals, so I'm finally got someone who's going to do a cone beam, and I'm going to be getting those out and working on it, and it's going to cost a lot of money, and I'm not looking forward to it, but I've got to do it because I certainly don't want to end up in the same place. And cardiovascular disease is the other one. They've done research, I've forgotten, was it in Texas or somewhere, where they tested, one of the cardiologists took scrapings, I believe, from the inside of the arteries that he was cleaning out. Have I got that right? And the bacteria, the virus, the toxins that were in there. Tell us about those. In
2006, Dr. Ott, OTT, did angiograms on 38 patients who had known coronary artery disease, known blockages. And at the time that he did the angiogram, he performed a specialized procedure called atherectomy. Ectomy means you take out. So this was actually a scraping, a roto-rooter, where he actually carved out the plaque to open it up, but he examined the plaque. And in the plaque, he found over 50 different fungi, viruses, bacteria, mostly from the mouth. And he found it in 38 out of 38 patients.
100%.
So I mean, why does that happen? It happens because you have a chronic pathogen colonization in the coronary artery. And what does a chronic pathogen colonization do? It produces toxins. Toxins are pro-oxidants. Pro-oxidants use up antioxidants, all right? So after you've had these pathogens for a while, you bring your vitamin C levels down to 0 inside the blood vessel. So these blood vessels are in a state of acute advanced focal scurvy. And what does that mean then? What that means then is it's the body's natural immune response to mobilize monocytes to an area that's inflamed. Inflamed means vitamin C depleted. They mean the same thing. So if you have infection, you have inflammation, you have vitamin C depletion, the first cells that come to that are monocytes. Guess what? Monocytes have 8,000% more vitamin C inside them than any other cell in the body. They also have more magnesium in them, which helps vitamin C delivery. They also have more hydrogen peroxide in them, which is there to kill pathogens. So they're literally designed by God or nature, depending on your proclivity, designed by nature to come in and restore vitamin C and obliterate the infection. But if you don't correct the mouth, you never clear this up. So something that's an acute inflammation becomes chronic. And this is where you develop atherosclerosis. After a while, the chronic inflammation brings in fibroblasts and starts building up plaque. Now, remember, why does it build up plaque? This is another very important thing to understand. If you have a blood vessel, and what's the worst thing that could happen to that blood vessel for your health? It would rupture. If it ruptures, you die.
Aneurysm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why would it rupture? It would rupture if the connective tissue starts to deteriorate, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, which happens when your vitamin C disappears. You need that for supportive structural response. So what's actually happening is, I mean, plaque is not good for you, but
it's strengthening the wall and thickening it.
If it thickens the arterial wall, it gives you some protection against rupture.
Yeah.
So it's the body's natural response to thicken the wall and make it less likely to rupture, but unfortunately it can thicken to the point where it blocks off.
Yeah, or a piece of it comes off and goes and causes a heart attack or a stroke. And as a family that have really poor endothelial lining, so the 9p21 gene, we have a 6G variant, which means that we have very poor linings of the blood vessels. So we are prone to aneurysm. My dad died of an aortic aneurysm. My mum's had massive aneurysms. My auntie's got them. So this is, for me, like really important to understand this whole process of cardiovascular. So we need, when you say focal vitamin C of deficiency, so causing basically scurvy in that tissue, this is something that you've repeated too in another context, which was osteoporosis, which really caught my attention because of the thing that I've been going through.
That's a focal scurvy of the bones, yes.
A focal scurvy of the bones. Now, everybody in the mainstream medical, like when mum broke her hip, it was get the calcium, get the calcium, get the calcium, get the bisphosphonates. And, you know, contrary to I knew that bisphosphonates were very, well, there's a lot of downsides to bisphosphonates, but I let myself be talked into doing one infusion. And that was a mistake because she got a hypocalcemic shock and had a seizure the next day and nearly died. But when I started to dive deep into osteoporosis research and what can we do to strengthen the bones, then I came across vitamin C, then I came across collagen, and the collagen matrix. Like, nobody talks about collagen either and the importance of that for a bone. When you put just calcium into the bones forcefully with bisphosphonates, which takes it out of the blood and puts it in the bone, but you're making a more denser bone, but a more brittle bone. And so it's more liable to get atypical fractures.
Well, the thing is you take a lot of calcium by whatever means and nothing else. And this is where modern medicine, quote unquote, modern medicine, traditional medicine gets really carried away, is if you take a large enough amount of calcium supplements, the bone mineral density test will show an improved score.
Yeah.
But it's like putting a coat of white paint on a rotting fence. It looks prettier, but it'll still break. Whereas you take large doses of vitamin C without anything else, and you'll see an increased bone density, and that represents real bone growth.
Yep. And how's it doing that? Why is there a focal scurvy in the bones? Why are we getting the osteoclast breaking down faster than the osteoblast? And how does vitamin C actually play a role there? And is collagen also a part of that conversation?
Well, it's estrogen deficiency. Okay. One of your greatest protectors against osteoporosis is estrogen.
Mum's on
but a
that
very
now.
Interesting study was done in animals some time back. But get this, in mice who had the ovaries removed, okay, which means those mice lost their estrogen protection, and without the estrogen, they developed osteoporosis. They also showed that when the ovaries were removed, large doses of vitamin C completely prevented the osteoporosis.
Wow.
So it was able to completely supply whatever it was optimal estrogen was able to do.
Wow, that's interesting. So it actually nullified the effect of the loss of the estrogen.
Right. In this model study, in this animal study, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And what else can we do so this is chronic use. Like, mum's had vitamin C infusions for 8 years now. But she's had cancer. She's had all these, quite a lot of drugs. She's had
always take several grams of magnesium with it. Never miss an opportunity on your IV to add magnesium. Never, never, never.
And the magnesium that they give in IVs is usually magnesium sulfate. And I've heard you say that can promote viral Is that a problem?
Well, no, it's not a problem. The only reason I bring that up is people are always asking, in the setting of the pandemic, what type of magnesium should I supplement? I said, well, there's more than a dozen different types, but I would recommend in the setting of the pandemic to take magnesium chloride, because in test tube studies, the chloride suppresses viral growth, the magnesium sulfate increases it. And, you know, you talked about Dr. Klenner with the vitamin C and the polio. Incredibly enough, at about the same time as Klenner in the 1940s was curing polio with vitamin C, Dr. Nouveau in France was doing the same thing just as effectively with oral magnesium chloride.
Wow.
Just as effective, nothing, just oral magnesium chloride, knocking out polio just like that. So, but as far as the IVs goes, you're just trying to get the magnesium in. You want to get the magnesium levels up inside the cells as high as possible, and it's not really important whether it's associated with sulfate or chloride.
I heard you tell a story about some people who got a magnesium infusion over a 24-hour period. I think they got quite a big dose over a longer, slow.
Patients on the intensive care unit with heart attacks. Okay. There had been a bunch of stuff in the literature showing magnesium improves a lot of things. So this group decided to boldly give 24 grams of magnesium intravenously over 48 hours. So a half a gram an hour, an hour, an hour. And then really nothing else, or nothing else in terms of long-term supplementation. Well, several things happened. Number one was there's a 50% reduction in death, number one. And then the heart attack patient. Number two, there's 50% reduction in arrhythmias. And then at follow-up 5 years later, without any chronic supplementation, this one-time huge infusion of magnesium still was decreasing all-cause mortality.
5 years later.
5 years later.
No extra supplementation.
No
Nothing
extra
does
supplements.
that. That's amazing.
Nothing does that. I mean, when people say what's the most important supplement, they think I'm going to say vitamin C. I say magnesium.
Yeah.
Because magnesium deficiency causes many diseases, and magnesium deficiency makes all diseases worse. And when you're deficient in magnesium, guess what? There's only one thing that corrects that deficiency, it's magnesium. Whereas if for vitamin C, and again, I'm not telling people not to supplement vitamin C. I'm just answering this ridiculous question about which one would you choose, is other antioxidants can minimally compensate for less vitamin C. There's nothing that can compensate for a low magnesium other than magnesium.
And it's epidemic that we have a low magnesium in our population.
But there's no one on the planet that has a normal
Everybody should measure their,
Yes, you're right.
And magnesium is an antagonist to calcium. So can you, like in your book, Death by Calcium, which is a provocative title that means you need to read it, Death by Calcium, we have way too much calcium in the soft tissues of our body. We should have 95% in our bones and 5% in the rest of the body. And you get that percentage, just 1% out, 94% in the bone and 6% in the body, you've already got a massive problem, haven't you? And magnesium is the antagonist for calcium. So that calcium has to, when magnesium is present, calcium is pushed out. Is that,
yes, in many ways, the primary overriding role of magnesium is to regulate calcium metabolism and to knock high levels of calcium, which, remember, all disease cells have elevated calcium levels, all of them. And one of the primary ways you allow more vitamin C and you allow more magnesium inside the cell and you allow glutathione to be synthesized is to bring the oxidative stress inducing levels of calcium down, which magnesium does. It's yin and yang. If there's a high calcium, there's a low magnesium. If you push the magnesium up, you push the calcium down. No exceptions. So it's primary regulation of the primary disease-causing substance, which is excess calcium. I mean, people may say calcium is good for you. Only a certain amount, only a certain amount. And after that, calcium, along with iron, along with copper. Those I call my 3 toxic nutrients. You absolutely need them at certain minimal levels, and above that, They're highly toxic, and they just get more toxic the more you take of them.
Exactly. And if you like you get an osteoporosis diagnosis, then what do? They stick you on calcium, which is going to increase your risk for all of the other things. And then we're eating a lot of dairy as a population. We eat a lot of dairy when we're told
calcium's not doing anything
calcium.
for the osteoporosis, but it's rapidly accelerating your chance of cancer and heart disease. Absolutely.
Cancer and heart disease. And the iron and the copper, those are other two. Like again, on the Nutristat test, the organic acids tests, and there's massive tests that we do called the Nutristat. It does all the copper and the zinc and all of those sort of levels and ceruloplasmin. I'm constantly seeing people with low ceruloplasmin, high copper, free copper, which is as toxic as mercury, and low zinc.
I don't think there's any such thing, maybe except in the most peculiar circumstances, in which I don't know that would be, copper deficiencies. I mean, we're all in relative states of copper excess, okay? and just like what you just said, the thing is, this is important, with iron and copper, well, you never need iron unless you have an iron deficiency anemia, because that means then that a low ferritin didn't have enough iron to make enough blood. But if you're making enough blood, you never need iron, no matter how low the ferritin storage level is. That's number one.
Right.
Now with copper, similar thing. And the thing is again, this is where we get into the abbreviology. So many docs see all these studies and they say, well, copper helps this enzyme, iron helps that, and just cofactors. And they say, wow, there's so many different things you need iron and copper for. We got to make sure you get a lot of it. No, these two things are recycled. Very little are excreted. They continue to be recycled. It's not like taking something nutritious, getting the antioxidant value out of it, and then excreting it in the stool or the urine. These things are in your body at fairly fixed levels. And when you increase them, all you do is massively increase oxidative stress.
So you should never supplement iron unless you have a really obvious,
well, you have to have
lost
iron,
a lot of
this
blood.
Is an important point. You have to have an iron deficiency anemia, which means small cells, microcytic, pale cells, hypochromic. This is another thing where our wonderful oncologists screw their patients badly. They not only give them toxic chemotherapy, but many times they have what's called the anemia of chronic disease. It's got nothing to do with low iron. But in this extremely simplistic thinking, it's like anemia needs iron. Anemia needs iron. So they just give iron, even though the anemia has nothing to do with iron deficiency. And what did I just say? So in addition to the chemotherapy, they're giving you more of one of the most pro-oxidant toxic things you can take when you have an excessive level of it.
Wow. And iron is, I mean, ferroptosis, is all about getting rid of excess iron, because iron promotes cancer. Iron feeds cancer. So
cancer and infections both feed on iron. Okay. If you have an infection, if you have a cancer, you start administrating iron, they both start substantially increasing their metabolic activity and growing.
Exactly. So you don't want to be putting in iron.
For pathogens, some antibiotics, and I'm not an antibiotic fan, but antibiotics can work in certain circumstances. And the interesting thing is, some of your most effective antibiotics are iron chelators. They actually just pull iron out of the situation, and that allows your immune system to better deal with the infection.
Didn't know that one. That's new on me. Okay. So iron, copper, and what was our third one that we? Calcium, thank you. That's the main one. So don't go supplementing with calcium. Don't, think I'm getting my strong bones by drinking my glass of milk. You're not. You're doing yourself more harm than good. And it's a far more nuanced conversation, as you've heard. And so get the book, Death by Calcium. There was one other question that I've been burning in my head that maybe you can help clear up for me. I had a scientist, Dr. Christine Horton, on, and she is, this is a bit left field for you, so you might not know this, but sulforaphane. So I'm a big fan of sulforaphane. I think it's got so many positive things that it does in the body, from the gut health to upregulating the NRF2 and so on and so forth. But Dr. Horton, who does the research, she's not in the clinical practice, but she's a researcher, says you should not have sulforaphane with vitamin C. In fact, you should never have vitamin C. You should only have sulforaphane. She's a sulforaphane researcher. Now, I've had this big dilemma because I do love sulforaphane. I think it has its place. I want to upregulate my NRF2, my endogenous antioxidant capacity. I understand all that. I want to increase my glutathione through that pathway, if you like. But I also need my vitamin C, and I need it for my adrenals, and I need it for my bones, and I need it for my cardiovascular system. And so I've got this dilemma of how long do I separate them? In her opinion, you should never have vitamin C ever. What's your take on that?
Well, I'm not going to say she's not sincere. She might be sincere, but she's not.
Yeah,
she's
totally.
ignoring a huge amount of science. I mean, the articles are all there. Now, if you want to just say, well, the articles are lying or so, I don't know what you would say about the 85,000 articles in the literature on vitamin C and everything it does for every condition that it's used properly. So I don't know. I mean, the thing is so many people are, especially unfortunately, in the non-mainstream supplement world, are doing their damnedest to carve out a name for themselves. So they just say absolutely ridiculous stuff and stick with it. And it's sometimes so absolutely ridiculous that somebody said, well, I can't believe that, but why would they say something like that if it wasn't true? And they plant that seed. You know, I just, you know, some people say vitamin C causes cancer. You know, I mean, they'll just say it and they'll stick with it. You know, so
is there a mechanism though by which it would inhibit the NRF2 pathway, and therefore, like she says, it's like counteract the sulforaphane. So the sulforaphane is doing its job, it's doing good things, and it's upregulating that NRF2, and it's just that the vitamin C will, because they're both antioxidant, they're going to cancel each other out.
Well, I'll first be quite honest and say I'm no expert on sulforaphane.
Sulforaphane, yeah.
So I'll at that point, but I will say this, as we talked about before, sometimes you need to go down several levels on the onion, but sometimes you need to go up a few levels on the onion. And in this case, it's very clear. The higher you maintain your vitamin C levels throughout your life, the longer you live. That's about as ultimate a study as you're going to get. All right. So when you start going down at lower levels and you have molecules interacting with molecules, and this one's oxidized and that one's not, and the abbreviologists come in and say, we'll do this enzyme, we'll do that enzyme, we'll inhibit this one, we'll stimulate that one. And then they come out with whatever conclusion they want. But vitamin C is the primary fuel upon which every cell in your body runs. Right. So, I mean, I don't even know how that would be rationalized away, but that's the state. That's the story.
No, thank you for that, because it's you know, what I find often is that people with absolute good intention, but sometimes you get too down in one rabbit hole, and especially I see this with people doing PhDs and things, that they are so far down that one rabbit hole they've lost the overview of the whole picture of the body, or the you know, because you're in one pathway and you're in one thing.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, exactly.
And it'd be hard not to, right?
You're in the weeds.
You're in the weeds, yeah, and you really know your stuff in the weeds. But how's that affecting? You know, it's a bit like when you do something in cell culture, doesn't mean it's actually going to work in the body, because we're a lot more complex than, you know, a single cell. Dr. Thomas, you've been absolutely amazing today. I'm just floored by your work. I'm constantly amazed at the new stuff that I get to learn from you on every lecture that you give and every book that you bring out. So where can people find you and your work and your books? And Dr. Levy gives these books away. Like, you can come and get these books off him. He's not making a cent of this. He's doing this because he wants to get the good information.
Well, if people contact my email, I give away a lot of the ebooks. I mean, if the other books on my website, you want a physical book, you have to buy it. Yeah. But I'll give people a link for not all of them, but for about 3 or 4 of the most significant books, I give you the link to download an ebook.
Yeah,
And
which is
the
amazing.
email is my initials, TE, last name Levy, MD, @yahoo.com. And the website is tomlevymd, .com.
.com.
I just, so that's, yeah, okay.
Yeah, tomlevymd.com. And that's where you can go and get these books, read them. They are all referenced up the wazoo. So you're not like just speaking out of thin air.
And go
These
to
are
the
all
article
amazing.
section. It says orthomolecular. That has my most significant articles that I've written, especially in the last couple of years, on following the pandemic, the interactions of cortisol and vitamin C, and a lot of other things that can help people a lot if they take the time to look at the information.
And Rapid Virus Recovery is a book that you should read. And yeah, just as a last thing on the COVID situation, if people are dealing with post-vaccine damage, which a lot of people are dealing with, what's your take on that and long COVID itself? Is there anything new that you wanted to add to that?
Well, that was what we mentioned at the outset.
Yeah.
The 254 nanometer ultraviolet light.
Yeah, if you can get
with
that
the
one.
ping-ponging back and forth. Docs don't like to hear this, but it's doing magic. It's doing magic. And even if it doesn't do it on 100% of people, let's say it does it on 80%. Well, you weren't doing anything for those 80%. So, but it's amazing. Sometimes you bring in something new, they'll pick at the ones that it doesn't help. And like ignore the fact that you've helped so many other people. Like I said, I'm not bothered at all with using things that I can't understand. I do my best to understand them, and I try to continue to evolve my understanding. But if I have something that's harmless, that resolves something dramatically, I think it's at the height of arrogance not to use it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. And when you've got all these sick people that are dealing with all these problems and post-pandemic, we're seeing them all the time. It's some terrible things happening. So this is one to put on your radar that's new. Let's hope these machines get out into the world and the doctors get hold of them and can use them. Dr. Levy, thank you so much for your time. I've got to go and rescue my mum. She's still on the exercycle after an hour and a half.
Okay.
But it's been wonderful having you again, and I look forward to maybe doing a few more with you, so we can dive deeper into one or two subjects and do it that way.
Sounds good. Take care, Lisa. Bye-bye.